The city of Calgary is home to the most successful light rail system in North America, the aptly named Calgary CTrain. There's just one big problem.
It relies heavily on the 7th Avenue South Corridor, which was a cost-saving measure done on the original Anderson City Center light rail line back in 1981. It has forever been planned to be replaced, however since then it has had 3 connections added and has been expanded more than once.
While extremely functional when in proper operation, it brings the network to its knees with even the slightest of delay, and it has therefore become a real problem.
I've got just the plan to fix it without all the caveats and asterisks of proposed and planned solutions. Welcome back to TransitCGY, a channel about urbanism, transit, and how all plays a part in our cities. The original Calgary Rail feasibility study done back in 1967 called for, well, a lot of things, but specifically a citywide metro service and an underground subway, specifically on the 7th Avenue section. However, rising costs, like many cities, pushed Calgary away from a heavy rail metro to light rail.
That also meant that there was much more flexibility for where tracks could be laid, since light rail is, unlike metro and heavy rail, designed to be used in street running sections. This allowed the city to run tracks above ground on 7th Avenue, which worked fine for the single south line that it served.
One line, no problem. But in 1985, the northeast line was added. Then in 1987, the northwest line. And in 2012, the west line. The original corridor is now serving 4 directions of train.
Demand for high-capacity rapid transit has pushed the city to expand the entire system to support 4-car trains during rush hour. And I know they don't run at all times, but you know what I'm talking about. There is one at least every couple of trains, as well as trains every 5 minutes on both the northwest-south line and the northeast-west line. This has led to downtown being slammed with trains non-stop for several hours each day, and has created a fair bit of problems. The CTrain downtown is controlled with a traffic light system designed to allow all trains to evenly progress along the corridor. That way movement is consistent and on time. If that doesn't make sense, here's a visual representation. Train 1 has just arrived at Stephen Street Station, and Train 2 has just arrived at Alexander Boulevard. Both are unloading and loading, and within 30 seconds have their doors locked. Now, the light goes green at Stephen Street, and Train 1 progresses towards Olympic Place. 10 seconds later, the light goes green at Alexander Boulevard, and Train 2 progresses towards Stephen Street. This continues on for all other trains passing through. It's extremely efficient, and it's a smooth system. There's just one problem. All it takes is for one person to hold the door for too long, or for a packed train to fully unload and then subsequently fully load to miss the light cycle. Come on, this has happened to all of us. This subsequently pushes back all other trains behind it to wait for the next green light cycle. The problem isn't helped by 2 lines converging and diverging at each end either. With twice the amount of trains and different levels of demand for each, the problem continues to repeat itself. This is exactly what turns a 10-minute ride through downtown into a 20-minute walk, stopping at every light and every station. It's seriously sometimes faster to jog. If you are a Calgarian, you probably already knew all that. It's pretty common for me to hear that the CTrain is great, it's just too slow through downtown. Or, I would use it more, but because of downtown, it takes me 20 minutes longer than driving to get to my destination. And that's kind of valid, because it's clearly not some hypothetical issue. It's a real problem that's turning away people from transit. And it's often because of the unpredictability and slowness through downtown. Fixing this problem would not only speed up the travel time of so many transit riders, it would incentivize more people to take transit over driving, since it could in many cases be faster. So how do we fix it? What is the solution to this 40-year-old dilemma? The city has more or less settled on the idea that someday in the future, the northwest-south running red line will be relocated 1 block south to a cut-and-cover style subway under 8th Avenue. In fact, the plan has actually been in place for so long that in 1982, during the construction of the new Calgary Municipal Building, a section of subway was already constructed, with the assumption that the CTrain would at some point be moved underground, which still hasn't happened. This was also, by the way, resurfaced in 2010. There was a thought that before the West Line would open, the CTrain should be moved underground to address congestion issues. Obviously, that's still not the case because it's 2025, and they're both sharing 7th Avenue, but I'll get into more of that later. This is still the official plan on the City of Calgary website today, and while it would fix the issues with 7th Avenue by reducing congestion, it would involve tearing up the historically themed Stephen Avenue, since the subway is going to be cut and cover, which is a large pedestrian destination for months, if not years, at a time. Therefore, a large portion of pedestrian traffic in a tiny area in the only pedestrianized section in Calgary would be closed, much like the Olympic Plaza project at the moment.
My other problem with this plan is that it would remove the direct transfer between the Blue Line Northeast and the Red Line South at the dual platform City Hall Bow Valley College Station.
The direct transfer could be preserved between the Red Line Northwest and the Blue Line West if a new subway and above-ground interchange station was constructed at 7th Avenue and 9th Street, which is where the two lines would then intersect. Instead of joining, they would then cross there, and the Red Line would continue to head south a block to 8th Avenue, and Blue Line would continue along 7th Avenue, but that hasn't actually been determined yet. Relocating the Red Line would also require rethinking the currently planned Green Line interchange at 7th Avenue and 2nd Street. This station has been thought to either be placed between 6th Avenue and 7th Avenue, or 7th Avenue and 8th Avenue, and it would have to be decided first before relocating the Red Line to make sure you favor the correct transfer point, because if the station is located too far north, nobody wants to walk outside to transfer needlessly. My personal biggest problem with this plan is that after over 40 years of being in place, it is yet to receive any funding or attention from the government, which means it probably won't happen. Another possibility would be moving both lines to an elevated viaduct through downtown. It's effectively the same solution as the previous, except if done right, it could preserve the direct transfer between the lines as a cross-platform transfer or still a direct crossover at both edges of downtown, and provide an easy access to the Green Line because both are elevated, so it would only require one escalator or staircase and no surface or extra work to get between lines. A couple of small problems though: the Red Line South would have to be completely rerouted over the CPKC tracks to accommodate an elevated viaduct, which would immediately incur costs. This would either involve digging a new tunnel that's further east of the current tunnel, because the viaduct would not be able to dip down to street level that fast unless it was planned to have a ground level City Hall station, or it would require a bridge over the tracks and then rejoining at Victoria Park, which would require potentially demolition or height limits put on certain properties that already sit there. It's a big deal. It would be hard, but it would be an option. The other problem is with our Plus 15 network, which sits at the exact ideal height for an elevated viaduct, and if preserved along 7th Avenue, as in they wouldn't have to destroy the Plus 15s, this would also incur significant costs because now the train has to be built higher, and it would be more expensive because the pillars have to be taller, more engineering, more concrete, wind, all kinds of weather issues. Not to mention that it would potentially have to rise above the future elevated Green Line station, which, while it'd be even a greater opportunity to create more stunning architecture in Calgary that we are known for. Come on, everybody loves our West Line, everybody loves our Peace Bridge, that kind of stuff. It would again, of course, incur even more costs. So obviously, the two obvious options are both expensive and impractical, and would create long system-wide disruptions for extended periods of time. There's no real way to just do this without shutting down large portions of the lines for potentially years at a time. Does that mean that we are stuck with what we've got? Not exactly. All we have to do is look to our friends just south of us. No, I'm not talking about the United States. I'm talking about Calgary-based US, Canada, Mexico Rail Company, Canadian Pacific Kansas City Railroad, and the right-of-way 2 blocks south of here. Check this out. Underpasses have been built to allow roads to pass under the train tracks. This means that CPKC can operate at ground level without any level crossings, and drivers can avoid getting stuck behind a multi-kilometer long train for 20 minutes to an hour, or even longer. This exact same method could be used to give CTrain and the roads the right of way simultaneously. And it can be done in a multi-phase plan to effectively transform 7th Avenue into a high-capacity, reliable corridor for rapid transit. Phase 1 would involve reprogramming lights to be timed in accordance with individual trains. For instance, if a train has arrived at a station, the pedestrian countdown begins immediately and the light changes in the train's favor. This already happens at both of the Blue Line intersections leaving and entering downtown, so it's obvious we know how to do this, we just haven't done it yet through the rest of it. Phase 2 would be adding safety arms and lights at each intersection to add even more indication that there is a train passing and drivers and pedestrians need to move away from the tracks. This can already be seen once again on the Blue Line at both ends of downtown, and it's used on all intersections in the Blue Line Northeast. Phase 3 is creating those underpasses at certain, if not all, intersections to allow cars and pedestrians to pass underneath the ever-busy train corridor. Staircases and ramps at each end of the overpass can be added to ensure that pedestrians can still access the platforms and sidewalks and access the buildings adjacent to those. Well now, congratulations! The priority problem with the CTrain has been addressed effectively, and it's even cheaper than other plans have called it to be. However, there are still more areas to improve. An important ability to transfer exists on both edges of downtown between the Red Line and the Blue Line. However, it is easy to miss your transfer train since both transfer points require crossing the street at least once, and on the west end, twice. Reconstructing City Hall Bow Valley College Station into an island platform would allow for a cross-platform timed connection between the Red Line and Blue Line trains, which would speed up trips and discourage riders from jaywalking across the street or hopping the platforms in hopes of not missing their transfer. A similar change can be made on the west end by removing the 7th Street platform and consolidating the station into an island in place of the current 8th Street station. Neither change would negatively impact the ability to transfer between Red Line South and Blue Line Northeast trains, or Red Line Northwest and Blue Line West trains, both scenarios which don't require currently switching platforms and would not necessitate that in the future either. While building island platforms can meet the capacity demands of the existing stations, it may require shrinking the sidewalks on both sides. And while doing so, it could bring the potential to a future enclosed system with fare gates. It's not a consideration at the moment. However, planning stations to allow an easy conversion makes costs lower and raises the appeal of it in the future, and it's an example of good planning that helps prepare ourselves for future scenarios and changes. Coming back to the construction of the underpasses, if the entire 7th Avenue is separated from its intersecting roads, there would be potential to push as much as a 3-minute rush hour frequency on both trains, which, combining both lines downtown, could allow trains to come every 1.5 minutes, since there would be less chance of delay, which would therefore allow for better schedule adherence. Since the length of city blocks would no longer be a concern either, stations could be consolidated into 3 stations: 1 western station, 1 central station with a Green Line connection, and 1 eastern station. Subsequently, platforms could even be extended to 5, 6, or even 8 cars, which would allow for similar capacities as many German S-Bahn systems, which the CTrain more closely emulates as it enters suburban Calgary and even through the downtown core, with some of its stations being super close together, to imitate almost a Stammstrecke-like service. By shortening trip times through downtown, improving reliability and speed, and removing car interaction from CTrain, as well as some very welcome other improvements, the effect of a 7th or 8th Avenue subway or downtown viaduct has been imitated with a much more cost-effective solution. It allows the reuse of existing stations and track, with plenty of room for easy expansion and improvement, no need to excavate more tunnel space or add extra elevated supports for longer platforms, and no need for construction times either to be extremely long. This seems like a perfectly logical solution to me. I have even had the opportunity of floating these ideas to others on the CTrain during morning commute, and all of them have agreed that the CTrain needs separation and priority, and appreciated this initiative would not require long disruptions or construction wait times, which leaves one thing left. How do we get the ball rolling? Well, if you support this idea and would like to see it come to fruition, I highly encourage that you would get the conversation moving with others you know, whether it's a family dinner or a classroom discussion. Feel free to share this video to people you think would benefit from this or find it interesting. As usual, if you have connections with influential figures, such as councillors, planners, or other city officials, please reach out to them and suggest that they consider this concept. I'll be contacting my local representatives, and I encourage you to do the same, even if you don't know them personally. A simple movement or conversation is all it takes to get the ball rolling with significant people. If you are a regular, you already know the drill, but for those of you that are new, if you enjoy the videos about transit, cities, and urbanism, feel free to hit those like and subscribe buttons. I'm always down to chat in the comments, so hit me up. Also, feel free to shoot me your video ideas. I'm always curious to see what you guys care about and what you want to see. May your 7th Avenue journey be swift and smooth, and have a great rest of your day, guys.